Safety for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. I used to call this class Safety for Gender Choice, and it confused some students who then began looking into what you could do to make sure your baby was a boy or a girl. That is not what this is about. What is the purpose of this module? What have you learned about this topic from your reading and research? What did you already know? Has your mind been changed by anything you read? Have you learned something that you never thought about? Do you know somebody who has either some confusion about their gender or sexual orientation, or who has been bullied because of their sexual identity or gender identity? Bullying in schools. Most anti-bullying policies do not protect LGBT students. The Add the Words campaign in Idaho is one of the most present news items about sexual orientation and gender identity that takes place in Idaho. From the Idaho Press Tribune in January of 2016, House Bill 2, a bill that would add the words sexual orientation and gender identity to Idaho Human Rights Acts, failed to advance to the House of Representatives floor on a party vote of 13-4. It's believed that right now you can discriminate against somebody because of their sexual orientation or gender identity in the state of Idaho in terms of whether or not to rent them a house, whether or not to let them keep their job, and in other political governmental places. This will be the 11th legislative session that the Idahoans have urged legislators to update the Idaho Human Rights Act to include protection from discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodation for all, including gay and transgender people. Add the Words Idaho is committed to elevating awareness of intersection in our communities. Attacks on the basis of access to medically accurate and safe reproductive health care, immigration status, race, nationality, ability, religion, socioeconomic status, age, veteran status, and climate justice are inclusive to affecting members of the gay and transgender community. In the news, here's a video on KIVI Channel 6 in Boise. One of the quotes, "We'd certainly like to stop coming here with the same ambition and goals, but we feel that lawmakers have a moral obligation to update the Idaho Human Rights Act and include sexual orientation and gender identity. The motivations haven't changed." This is a recent article. The American Psychological Association, which you can find at this website, has a long document regarding sexual orientation and gender identity, and I pulled out a few of the ones that made the most sense to add to this video. Therefore be it resolved that the American Psychological Association and the National Association of School Psychologists affirm that same-sex sexual and romantic attractions, feelings, and behaviors are normal and positive variations of human sexuality regardless of sexual orientation identity. Be it further resolved that the American Psychological Association and the National Association of School Psychologists affirm that diverse gender expressions, regardless of gender identity, and diverse gender identities beyond a binary classification are normal and positive variations of the human experience. This may be the kind of information that makes people really angry or makes people really happy. Safety is a global issue. Amnesty International, this is their website. They are all over the world, including the United States. People who face discrimination, inequality, and violence based on who they are. So they name these 4 sets of people. Women experience violence and discrimination based on their sex and gender. Sexual and reproductive rights are under increased threat in the U.S. and around the world. LGBT people are harassed, discriminated against, and attacked because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And Indigenous people have faced human rights abuses for generations, and today they continue to be denied justice in protecting their land and water, holding perpetrators of sexual assault accountable, and other areas. So sex comes into it on all 4 of these particular issues. So it's a global issue that Amnesty International is involved in, which means it's not just happening to your neighbors or to somebody in your school or somebody you know in town or somehow nationally in some of the fights that have gone on between, say, cake bakers and people who are getting married who are the same sex. But it also happens quite frequently, more often, in countries that are less developed than the United States. From the Bangkok Post, here's the website that gets you to that post. Killings, rape, mutilation, torture, and cruelty, inhuman and degrading treatment, as well as arbitrary detention, abduction, harassment, physical and mental assault, such as lashings and forced surgical changes. These are all part of what happens to the community of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning people. So, sex and gender. What's the difference? Sex refers to the biological and physiological characteristics that define men and women. Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for men and women. To put it another way, male and female are sex categories, while masculine and feminine are gender categories. Aspects of sex will not vary substantially between different human societies, while aspects of gender may vary greatly. So if gender is socially constructed, that means that to be masculine you must meet a set of criteria as a man to be socially accepted in society, and then feminine also refers to the way women should apparently behave that is normal in society. Take a stand. This week's topic often causes disagreements about how we should treat or accept or condemn or provide safety for those who identify as different from the norm of male biology, male gender, and female biology, female gender. So one of the things you might think about is, where do you stand on the issue of gender-neutral bathrooms? At Boise State University, there are some bathrooms that are family bathrooms, which means that any gender or biological female or male can use those bathrooms. There are very few places where there actually are gender-neutral bathrooms available. So you watch this video, it's on the required list. This gentleman talks to the person who, when he was 13 years old, changed his sexual identity from male to female. He argues that he did the best that he could given the amount of information that they had at the time. But then he also goes on to state that a male brain is a male brain is a male brain. And it's something that you'd think would be available when the kid was 13-year-old, whether or not this person was producing testosterone. Another required video is Switching Teams, where Leslie Stahl profiles Harvard swimmer Skylar Baylor, who may be the first openly transgender male athlete to compete in an NCAA Division I men's sports. Are there rules regarding who can play sports and under what gender they need to be? I think if you check with rules and laws for whatever your particular sport is, there will be something that addresses LGBT community. Progress in the world. Facebook now has 58 gender choices. June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court makes same-sex marriage a right in the United States. And Pope Francis stated, "If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge him?" While also stating that while homosexual orientation is not sinful, homosexual acts are. For those of you who believe that homosexual acts should be okay, this may be a step in the right direction. For those of you who strongly believe that homosexual acts are inappropriate, this may be alarming for you. Same-sex marriage. The debate in Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission comes down to this. Can state and federal laws compel merchants to serve any and all customers, or do constitutional rights of free speech and religious liberty allow for exemptions? this is going to be a debate that goes on for a couple of years. It's really interesting to debate if your right to free speech can affect whether or not you get to buy or sell something to people whose orientation you find offensive or inappropriate. What if your child did not conform to expected gender roles? What are some things you could do as a parent to provide support to strengthen a child's self-esteem and sense of self-worth? What might you do either intentionally or unintentionally as a parent that might undermine a child's sense of self-worth and self-esteem? Trust me, as a parent, I know that you will do this even if you don't think you are. But when your kids get older, you can talk to them about their sense of self-worth and what might have happened to them while you were their parent, and you can come to a better understanding of the fact that they are human beings who deserve to have the same rights that an adult has in terms of the civil rights that are applicable in the United States and the rights that are applicable according to the Universal Declaration of Rights. So, what steps could you take as a parent or friend to ensure the safety of a child even though you don't understand or like or condone how the child presents themselves? So if you really don't like what your child is doing, how can you still love them? How can you still make sure that they're safe? And trust me, your kids will do stuff that will drive you crazy, that you don't understand, that you don't like, that you can't condone. But I think that as a parent myself, it's important to make sure that your children are safe, even if they're 25. Thanks for listening.